carry on. I'll start the recording.
No, I did, Nishant, just I did.
Okay.
So basically, I think in so I think I spoke also some points afterwards after you left. Basically, that they would eventually face some issues with the current lockdown. And I think we are already seeing there was a small spurt in jewelry, and but that is declining also right now, as per the latest results, I think. And they can benefit from the omni-channel strategy across jewelry, watches, and eyewear, and continue with their aggressive plan to gain market share. Uh, and they have one added benefit is that they have a very strong brand image. They have these franchisee-based model across India, which I think in the jewelry segment, I don't. I think there are only very, very few brands you that have that in India. And they would need to, some other points probably is they would need to focus on their international strategy, because that is one big challenge for them, because they are very India centric and India focused, but they are not yet a global brand. So they have the opportunity, probably leveraging on the Tata backing behind them, to gain an international presence. Then, of course, some of the benefits are that they have the growing purchasing power of. I'm just covering also some positive and negative economic and other points that could be of use for them. Is that, of course, you have the growing number of people who have higher purchasing power
Kunal, I
in
have a
India.
question here. I have a question
Yeah,
here. So,
yeah,
in the jewelry business, I think jewelry
yeah,
business, as Ishwar was saying, around 90% or 85% of the revenue comes from there. What
correct.
percent of the profit comes from the jewelry business? That is question one, not just for you, for the group, if anyone has the answer. What percentage of revenue comes from jewelry business? Let's talk about last financial year, last 3 and last 5 financial years.
See, the
No,
jewelry
no, 1 second.
division reported
1 second.
revenue degrowth of
Kunal,
5%
1 second.
year on year.
What's the questions? So the
Okay.
revenue that comes from jewelry business for the last financial year, last 3 and last 5 financial years, if somebody has the exact numbers, the profits
Yeah.
that come from the jewelry business. And the third question is, what percentage of the jewelry business in India is with Titan? So like out of the total market size, is Titan 2%, 3%, 5%, 20%? What percentage of the business is with Titan? These are the three questions I have.
Okay. I might have part of the answer, not everything. Is I understood that the jewelry division reported revenue degrowth of 5% year on year to about 3,900 crores. And
No, that is the business degrowth, right? That is not the
yeah,
question. The question is out of the total amount, 100% revenue, 100 rupees that Titan generates at revenue, how much did came from the jewelry business from 1st of April 2019 till 31st of March 2020? Simple. I just need the percentage. 85%, 60%, 65, 66. Does anyone have the number, or is somebody trying to pull it up?
I think they are targeting to reach 10%. I see some article.
No,
They're
Ranjit, that is 10% market share, right? That is the third question. First question,
Mhm.
how much of the total revenue of Titan comes from the jewelry business?
I think for um I think for last year it was about 84% if I'm not wrong. I'm not sure on the number though.
I had the 92%, and I can't find the source. I read it up somewhere.
I have 80 to 85%.
Okay, so
But
can we get the actual data? Because that will be interesting, right? So that will tell us. So we know in terms of just guesswork or haphazardly that revenue from the jewelry business is a key portion, but we should be able to get the 1 year, 3 year, and a 5 year figure from the annual report, or just try googling. And one quick point. Yesterday also I wanted to ask: does everyone in the group know how to pull all the reports for a company, like sources of information?
the investor relation part on a website of a company.
Yes, that is correct. But is everyone aware of it? So shall I take that as a yes or a no? I'll take that as a yes. Okay. So yeah, so we need those numbers. So maybe Kunal, you can continue. Maybe somebody else can try pulling that up. So 1, 3, 5 year sales and revenue from the jewelry division, and then yeah,
I
Ranjit, you
think I
had that
have
point.
the number. I'm just
So they
getting the
want to
report.
reach 10%, right, Ranjit? You are saying as of today, what is the percentage? And is it 10% of the organized market or of the complete market? And can someone tell me why that is important when you are evaluating a company like Titan? What percentage of the market they control?
I think if they have a
It
majority
gives
of
it
the
gives a detail about the market share, right? And if you have the total value of the market, you know what size of the pie Titan holds
yeah.
in
And
terms of
also
numbers.
shows about can tell us about the future potential growth, right? If it is already stagnated or
Correct.
um, if there is a
Correct.
scope for the growth.
Exactly. So basically, say if the total size of the jewelry market in India is 1 lakh crores and Titan controls, say, 1% of it, that is 1000 crores. They have a huge 99,000 crores of market which they can capture. This, when looked in conjunction with the data, what is the market growing itself? So say if that market is growing 10% per year, so additional 10,000 crores of demand is coming in the jewelry business every year. And Titan only controls 1,000 crores, which means the scope for growth is huge. Whereas let me reverse it. If say the total market is 1 lakh crores again, but it is declining by 5% every year, and Titan already controls 90% of it. So they already control 90,000 crores of that revenue. And if the market is declining every year, so next year it will only be 95,000 crore worth. And 90% of that will still be lower than 90,000 crores. So you see the point, and this is the issue in a lot of European countries today. A lot of the markets are at a level where they have started declining, and companies which are even market leaders, without doing anything wrong, they will still keep declining. Like for example, Japan, and that is why they have deflation. So when people think like a lot of people don't understand the concept of deflation, but Japan has had deflation for 30 years, which is like really crazy. And deflation is much riskier than inflation, because once prices start falling, people think, ah, okay, this same thing I can get for 9 rupees next year. Today it is 10, next year it will be 9. So I'll buy it next year. Then when next year comes, they think, Array, if I wait one more year, it will be at 8. So they keep postponing the purchase decision, which in itself becomes an unvirtuous cycle. And Japan has tried everything from 0% interest rate. So people, when the interest rates are zero, people are just putting money in their lockers and inside their pillows. So there are a lot of interesting tales what Japanese do with their cash actually. It's a heavily cash dependent economy for one. And two, they put cash in their pillows and all, below the bed and all that. And they sleep with it. Because there is no point keeping in the bank. Nothing will happen. So this data is also very, very important, especially for company. This is not just for Titan, this is across industries. Is somebody working on the template that we discussed? Because we discuss a lot of ideas, but then how do we implement it? Can 3-4 people volunteer to work on that template? Make a group offline and work together. Can I get some volunteers, please?
I'll volunteer.
Okay, thanks, Ishwar. Who else can work with Ishwar on that?
I can support Ishwar. I cannot take like full responsibility, but I can help him for sure.
Okay, thanks, Vaibhav. Who else? Okay. Okay, think about it and let us know by next class. So we have 2 people, so both of you can start working on that template. The template.
Can you just define the objective of the template
Sorry.
again, Nisha?
The objective of the template will be sure to put different industry segments, and some of these parameters will be common, like I mentioned, market size, and whether the market's share of wallet, which is basically the company that we are evaluating, what percentage of the market they control, and the market size in itself, whether it's growing, declining, and then just put in the template saying that, okay, last 3 years, last 5 years. The objective will be to have a template where basically if given to anyone, they can just put in all the data, and then it will tell them exactly from a value investing perspective whether that company is worth investing or not. And this template will be industry specific. So you will have a template for banking, you will have a template for retail, you will have a template for manufacturing, you will have a template for automobiles, so on and so forth, because each industry has different parameters on which we evaluate them. And this will be a working document. So this will take few months or maybe even years to be a perfect document, but we will start working on it. So right now the 2 of you are there. If people will not volunteer, then I will figure out whom to assign it to. So I will find some people.
Also, Nishant, one topic that we may need to cover is find out the net present value of the company, because how do we exactly know whether it's a company has a certain number of shares and whether the share price is correct or not. And I was researching online, and there's several methods, which is discount analysis, and there's some other methods I don't understand. So it's a topic that we can cover in the future.
Sure, we can do that. But from our perspective, this information is readily available from Screener, right? So the book value that you show is your net present value.
Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't know that.
Okay, yeah. But then, as you said, there is no perfect method, because when you are discounting for the present value, you are assuming that the next few years this will be the cash flow. The company may or may not hit those numbers.
Yeah.
So
generally, it's a certain kind of art. That's what I understand.
Yeah, because again, as we were discussing in one of the sessions, if you remember, that every accountant has their own philosophy. So somebody will say Titan's goodwill is 500 crores. Somebody will say 5,000 crores. Somebody will say 400 crores. So in between, like for example, the Reliance, Mukesh Ambani says net debt is 1,60,000 crores. Some people say it is 3,30,000 crores. So whom do you believe? Everybody has their own number and own story to tell.
And does the book value change over time, or is it fixed? That's what I don't understand.
No, book value changes, right? So every quarter after your profits are disclosed and everything. So actually this book value is like a balance sheet. Every day it will change. So if I look at the book value today and tomorrow, it will change. But nobody does it on a daily basis because it's too complicated and not an efficient use of time. So people generally do it quarterly. So every quarter, once the company publishes the financial results based on the profit they generated, the book value will either go up or go down. Like for example, DMart, with such a bad results, their book value would have gone down. Now, unfortunately, you were asking, right, what is the advantage of taking a Screener premium? I think when you take a premium, you will have access to chat or some kind of support there where you can ask them. So this was one topic that I actually wanted to bring up. Good that it came to my mind. As a group, can we create some generic IDs and take subscriptions for few things like Screener premium or some of that? And this will be generic, shared across, and people can share the cost as well. It shouldn't be much. Start with Screener, see how much it is. It shouldn't be more than €5 a month. So that would cost, maybe if 20 people are sharing it, it will be less than 25 cents a month. So €5 is $400. So if 20 people share it, it's 20 rupees per person. That's not a lot. I don't think it's a lot. So maybe we could look at doing that. That could be one good way to leverage the group. Rather than each one buying their own, take one and just put a generic user ID, ABCD, or whatever, and share it with the group. So if that is okay with everyone, or at least with few, whoever wants to contribute, then we can share with those people. We will share it with everyone, but yeah, even if 5 people pay up, it's okay. So figure this out. If it's acceptable to everyone, if you don't want to answer right away, maybe if you guys want to go back and then think and put it on WhatsApp, that's fine. I'll take the count and then one can pay and then share it. Okay. So yeah, Kunal, you can continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think I will drag on too much. So basically, they have. I mean, if I go through the investor report they have made as well, is that they're planning to leverage more on the Tata brand. And something that I had discussed yesterday is that there are a lot of synergies possible. And I mean, they are trying to basically restart and reignite the watch business and to use the smartwatch and wearables to get more benefits out of this business. But I mean, that would be also a big challenge. And I mean, on a personal front, would at this point probably wait for a bit more time to invest in this company.
Okay, thanks, Kunal. We are kind of done with Titan. If anyone has some thoughts they want to share, do. Guys, any questions on what we discussed this week on WhatsApp? Any general questions? Any topics you want to be covered again, like what is book value or what is a P ratio or something? Anyone has questions around that, or any questions in general? Please feel free to ask, because right now on top of my head I don't have a topic. So yeah,
I
Akash, go
have
ahead.
some data to present. Just give me a moment. You can continue. Just give me a moment. But I found a report. I'm quite interested. Just give me a moment.
So from the investor relations report, at least I see that the revenue share of the jewelry business was about 83% in 2020. But I don't know if I've calculated it right or not, but in the profit loss percentage, I do see that it's about 98%. Can someone verify that? Because
Yeah,
it
that
says
is
profit or loss from segments before finance cost and tax. The
that is
jewelry.
correct. Vivek, that seems correct, because watch and all is making losses. A lot of people want them to sell that watch business. That is what we saw also, right? 4 million it was losing, that one watch brand.
Yeah.
They're losing heavily on the watch and eyewear segment. So there's a lot of people who are saying they should exit those two and just have the Tanishq brand, Tanishq by Titan brand. Which slide is it anyways in the investor presentation? Maybe I can share it.
Page 8 of 20.
8 of 20 investor presentation.
No. I opened the financial report itself directly from the 8th of June. The quarterly results on Q4.
Okay, so you opened the earnings. Yeah, so
In investor presentation in page 8 of 20, they want to reignite the brand's power.
No,
In the
I'm not
watch
looking at the
business.
presentation, Kunal. So if
Okay.
you open the quarterly results.
Okay.
He's
of the
probably looking
Q4,
at the Q4 result, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because investor presentation has 41 pages. Yeah, this one has 20 pages.
And then if you take a look at the page 8.
Yeah, this is what I was looking for. Yeah, I will share this one.
But I tried getting the overall jewelry business market share, but they're only like external presentation, but I don't see any maybe should we take a look at how much Titan is buying in terms of raw gold from the RBI?
No, we'll be able to figure out. We just need to spend some time. Yeah, so if you look at just here, so it is in lakhs, right? So if I have to convert it, I will divide by 100. So jewelry business is contributing 532 crores as profit. Eyewear business is contributing only 2 crores as profit. What is the use of being in that
But
business?
that is only Q1, right, Nishant? So if you, sorry, that is the end of 3 months.
Sum up.
So if you go
Yeah.
to the
You'll have
year-end
to.
thing, year-end column, that is 1 to 4th column,
Hmm.
that would be what we'll be interested in, as it.
Yeah, so you just analyze it. I would have just analyzed it. But yeah, even just look there. 2061 crore comes as profit from jewelry business. Eyewear actually lost them 14 crores. Others lost them 58 crores. God knows what is that others. Corporate again lost them 99 crores. So 99 plus 58, 158 crores plus 14. So in fact, those businesses are losing them 172 crores. Why keep those businesses? Just shut them down. Close it. And watches generated, okay, 365 crores. Sorry, I was wrong. Watches is still generating some profit. But those three, eyewear should be shut. So there's a lot of talk actually in the market that they should shut the eyewear business.
But if you look at the overall revenue of the eyewear itself, right? Eyewear did increase in revenue, so that means that they were able to increase their market share. But their losses grew from 2019 to 2020.
Yeah.
Correct, right? But doesn't make any sense, right? So a business that is generating 44 crores in revenue is still losing 14 crores. So basically, it is like those Zomato types, right? And eyewear business is
The
not growing at that.
losses.
It is not
The
growing at
losses
that.
decrease, but it is still losing.
So the eyewear business is not growing at 100% and all. It is probably growing at 30%. Yeah, there is a huge unorganized market in India, and that won't go away. And Titan cannot be in every street in India. So I don't know. There's a lot of talk in the market. Let's see what they do. But if you see
What-
their assets, right, they have a huge amount of assets in the watches segment. So 2,143 crores of assets, and that is 25% of the jewelry business. But in terms of profit, they are nowhere close to 20. Yeah, profit is also kind of same. So jewelry business is 2061, around 18% of the jewelry business. So yeah, fair enough. But eyewear has what, 495 crores in assets. Yeah, that is very small compared to the jewelry business anyways.
this makes me think that their eyewear is mostly not in-house manufacturing, but they're in a deeper part of the supply chain, maybe through Luxottica or someone else. But for watches and jewelry, they seem to have invested into tooling in-house, so they're able to differentiate themselves as a brand as well. And differentiation in these segments makes sense, not in eyewear.
Yeah, but then what is the point of being in a loss-making business, right? So if they are losing 14 crore last year, so this is audited numbers, right? Yeah, for 31st March 2020. Now we can quickly go and check 2019 also, and they'll probably have a similar kind of loss. Let me pull up
We
2019.
have the 2019 on the last column, right, Nishant, in the same thing?
Yeah, so you have the 2019 numbers also. I could go to then 18 and pull 18 and 17
Yeah,
numbers. Correct.
yeah,
So they have how much loss? No, the losses have gone up actually, right? Where did you say losses
exactly.
have
So
gone down?
that's what I meant. So
2
in terms
crore
of the
losses is
revenue,
now 14 crore, which means they have spent more on marketing or whatever.
yeah,
But the revenue has grown interesting. Oh, okay.
that
So it
that
has
was my
grown
point. So the revenue has
40%,
increased. Yeah,
40% growth. So that is good growth. But see, from 1,502 crores to 2,143 crores, still, no, sorry. Eyewear from, oh, it has, where is
doubled.
eyewear? No, not doubled, right? Third one is
Assets have
eyewear.
doubled, right, for eyewear?
No. No. We should look at the revenue. Where is the revenue number? Eyewear revenue has grown from 133 crores to 171 crores. No, it's the third number, right? 511 crores to 544 crores. It's hardly 5% growth. Revenue has also not grown. What is the use? You
But the
understood?
losses increased drastically from 238 to.
Yeah, so revenue went up by 33 crores. I have converted to crores. 238 is lakhs. So divide by 100. So 2 crore to 14 crores. So around 12 crore additional losses in 30 crore additional revenue. Which means for the eyewear brand, all this ad that they are giving through various media, right?
Mm-hmm.
that itself is causing them, means that will be one expense, right? So that
Yeah.
ad income is like a loss, but they have to give ad to get people to come to their iStores.
Yeah.
So
But
might as well
what is
just,
interesting is they've still gone ahead and they've invested in, right? So if you look at the segment wise assets and liabilities, it has increased from 10 crores to 21 crores.
no, it is not 10 crore, it is 106 crore. It is 10,000 lakhs, right? If you divide
Sorry,
by 100.
106 crores to 217 crores.
Correct, but how are they funding it? They have probably increased the liability by the same amount, right? So they have just taken some loan and opened new stores. So if you see, the liability has also gone up
Yeah.
from 127 crore to 233 crores.
Yeah.
So actually liability is higher. Now we don't know what they are counting as liability and asset, but general thing will be they have just taken some loan and invested in the store.
Yeah.
Now, have they bought the store, or they have just interior is theirs and it's on a revenue sharing? We don't know, right? So these are the other details you will need to go into.
Yeah.
So although we are ending our fourth session, we haven't gone so deep. A lot of information is missing. That is where the template will help. So next time we
Nishant,
can
I'm
divide.
actually interested in one more aspect. So for each of these subsections, right, sub revenue generators, it would be interesting to understand what percentage or what portion of the supply chain do they control. So that shows a tighter control over the entire end-to-end market, right? So they'll be able to tweak both the supply and the demand as per their will. So, for example, in jewelry, if they have the workmanship and the tooling, everything in-house, they can control, how do they want to uh, generate or control the production itself. But for example, if you take eyewear, if they're at the if they're always stuck at the will of others, then that means that they will be paying some debt over to cover some minimal production value, etc., right?
Yes, you have the right question, but where is the answer? Do we have the data readily available? Must
Exactly. I
somebody
mean,
research?
where do we find these things then usually?
Just Google it, or it will be hidden somewhere in the annual report. Read the annual report, right? That is what I
Also,
told people to read, the 10-year annual report, but I'm sure nobody read it, including
also
me.
Vivek, to add to what you said, it'll be interesting to understand if they have a franchisee revenue model also.
Absolutely, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, because I think
Everything you
most
will
of
get,
this, yeah.
everything you will get in these 284 pages, but you have to read. So 10 year means 3000 pages of reading. Nobody said value investing was easy. Did I say ever? So yeah, so everything will be here. See, if you see just here, right, they have volunteering hours and all that. So everything will be here. So that is where, see, that is what Warren Buffett says, right? So I told you guys before joining the program, I'll make all of you Warren Buffett. But to become Warren Buffett, you have to start reading like him. That is what he does before investing in any company. He reads minimum 10 years of annual reports. Sometimes he reads 20 years for each of the
Uh,
companies.
Again, Nishant, I mean, we were having this discussion with Vivek yesterday, but I mean, it's something that we should speak also. And now, okay, 10 years annual reports, okay, fine. And value investing also, you say, okay, I invest today in a company and I keep it for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years. But since now the barrier for entry in many industries have reduced, and the industries are changing very fast and rapidly, how do you know that in the next 5 years that company will survive, or 10 years, and how it might not be changed due to the dynamic nature of today? I mean, how industries change, innovation, and everything. So you can't say that I'm investing in a company and
No, no. So
expect.
see, you answered your question yourself, right? And there was a very nice article. I don't know if I shared it in the group. I did want to. So just Google it, okay? Quickly, someone will get it. The somebody has published an article in the last 2 weeks saying the Warren Buffett model doesn't work anymore, and he lost $50 billion in the last quarter. So you answered the question by saying that earlier value investing was for 40 years. So you buy a
Yeah.
company in 1980 and you hold for 40 years. But because of the rapid advancements in technology, yes, probably value investing is not as valuable today. It is more of growth investing, but still it holds good. The basic principles of evaluating a company holds good. is that you should know everything about the company you are buying. Otherwise, you are just buying a trend.
No, that is for sure.
One second.
Don't
And
deny that.
the value investing cycle has gone down from a 30-40 year cycle to a 10-year cycle. So now you hold for 10 years, not 30 years. So that probably answers that question.
Yeah.
For 10 years you can predict, because for 10 years the barriers and then again the trick of value investing is, right, you buy into companies where the barrier of entry is higher. See, even for like a Facebook, let's take an example, right? You think that, okay, it's very easy to start a social media, but now Facebook has a huge market presence and it's become a monopoly. Now nobody can crack that. TikTok was probably become a monopoly, but the government banned it. That is an extraordinary event because of the Chinese transgression on the border, and because of this global movement against China, and also in my opinion, it is also driven by India trying to balance that whom do we want to give more importance to in terms of the H1B visas or etc. etc. We have far more dependence on US than we have on China. China also has a surplus labor force, and there is not as much of a mindset among Indians to move to China. Again, the language is also an issue. We are more English speaking than Mandarin speaking. So considering those, our government has made a tactical thing that to be closer to the US and then China, and then obviously it's the geopolitics of it, right? That India, China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, we have our own history and the mess that comes with it, and the Asian land border issue, and our historical issues over the last 1500 odd years. So that is another reason that the present Indian government is trying to be closer to the US. But look what Mr. Trump is doing, right? He's telling goodbye Tata Indian students, no more visas. So that won't work, right? It can't be one way. Then we will also start saying, okay, goodbye Tata McDonald's, and we will start taxing Facebook and Google and all of that, right? So this will come to that. Like he said, he wants to tax French cheese. So the French said, okay, fine, you tax our cheese, we will tax your Google and Facebook, because those are your exports. So trade is a two-way street, right? You get what you give types. So that is where it is in terms of the tactical relationship today. So yeah. So did I answer your question?
Maybe to add, Nishant, to Kunal's point, that's a very interesting point that he resisted as well. So in our template, we should also understand what is the entry barrier threshold, isn't it? Or do we see or how long did it take for, let's say, number 2 and number 3 players in the market to garner enough market share in this space? Or what is the probability of eating up into the primary market share that we are studying into?
Absolutely. You guys can see my screen, the screen that I am on.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm on the annual report where it says 335 lakh crore and all. Hello?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can see it.
So this is an interesting statistic, right? So here they are giving some projections and all. And see, this is where I keep telling that a lot of people say that India is a developing economy. See, 62% of our GDP is consumption. So we are more like the US than China or Taiwan. We are already a developed economy. We are a consumption-based economy and a services-led economy, not a manufacturing-led economy at all. So we are actually first world, if we count it that way. But yeah,
Well, statistics can be made to tell any story that we want, right? So
no, but this is a fact. This is not a story. We are actually a consumption-led economy.
but unfortunately we cannot conclude on one metric, right, Nishan, because we don't know what percentage of our demography is actually in the consumption mode and how many of them are in paycheck to paycheck mode, right?
Yeah, but that is a different statistic altogether, right? But if you compare to Germany, Germany itself is not a consumption-led economy. So how is it developed? So what is the definition of developed versus developing, right? These are very complicated questions, but it can be discussed in multiple factors. So if you look at pure economically, the Western consumption-led economic model, India, UK, US, these are the large consumers. See, no producer can survive without consumer, right? That has been the anger of countries like US against Germany and Japan and China, that they don't simulate local demand. They just manufacture and sell it to someone else. Sell it to your own people. China has 1.4 billion people. Germany has 80 million people. Japan has 130 million people. Make them buy the products. Na? Why are you shipping everything? See, today the American consumer, people think that America, why the dollar is not falling. It is because of the American consumer that these companies are surviving. Today, if the American consumer stops buying, all these Japanese export firms or the Chinese export firms or the German export firms are down in the dumps because they don't know, they don't have a business model because the German consumer doesn't want to buy. Like for example, the German state has had a fiscal surplus for many years and they are just not ready to spend more to build schools or do whatever with that money. Or see, the German government can either use that additional money to build schools, increase consumption, or reduce taxes. Let there be more users in the hand of the people. Let people decide what to do with that. The US consumer cannot run this globe. So it's like a two-way street. So the Chinese people want the US consumer to buy. The Chinese state doesn't want Chinese people to buy. So they fund the Chinese US consumer by then buying. So if the consumer doesn't have money to buy, what do? You give him debt. So who funds that debt? China funds that debt. You see, it's like a symbiotic relationship. Are you guys able to make the connection or is it too complicated?
Yeah, now that you tell, I'm just thinking about what explains the rationale or what explains at all the austerity measures that Germany and UK keep enforcing, right?
What explains is the mindset, right? So the German mindset is driven by 1945. So the grandparents told their children that after World War II we had hyperinflation. But that is gone. People need to understand that economically it is not possible. That is why I say financial literacy is extremely poor. People live in the past. Like for example, my mother, I told her 1,000 times, don't invest in gold. But she's like, I can't wear mutual fund. Okay, I couldn't convince her to buy mutual funds. I have had like thousands of hours of debates, but now I've given up. And equity stores, she is like, this is gambling. You are winning from someone else. I explained what trading is and all zero sum game and all. And she's like, I don't want this money. I will not sleep peacefully. We will have disease in the house. I said, people are making hundreds of crores. It's like, no, nahi chahiye. I'm like, okay, chodo ja, nahi chahiye. That is what forced me to buy 3 houses in Bangalore. When I would have not bought even one, I would have lived all my life in rent, which is far more efficient use of capital, buying versus renting. Okay, fine, for emotional reasons, buy one. But 3 houses, which generate 1% return per annum, including capital appreciation. And headache of managing the tenant, etc., managing the taxes, managing all the mess. 1% return, sometimes zero. But ghar to hai na, I can see the house, I can see 4 walls, I can see kitchen. Okay, fine. This is what it is.
But Nishant, you touched upon a interesting aspect. Is that me or?
I don't know. A lot of people are unmute. I think everybody go on mute and then one by one unmute.
Okay, I'll try it now. So you touched upon, the mindset of the people, right? The consumerism driven by the end consumer itself. But I was referring to the austerity measures the government is imposing on the people.
Yeah, so the government is a function of the people, right? So the German government is the function of the people. Who becomes Germany's? So Miss Merkel, she is from Eastern Germany, even more less consumer driven, right? So you need to see what happened. See, the current economic order that you see is everything to do with World War II and how everything happened after that. In the 1940s, after World War II, US had a large industrial surplus of production in 1947. US was producing far, far more goods than its people could consume. Now, US had 3 options primarily: reduce production to match the demand, start exporting, or make its own people buy more. Reduce production. The capitalist said, no, why should I reduce production? I want to produce more, make more money. Paisa hai bhai, dhanda. All are baniyas, right? All are baniyas in US, country of baniyas. Okay. So then the second option, export. Export to whom? Europe is devastated. India is devastated. We have had our India-Pakistan fight and all that nonsense that came with it. Most of the Eastern world is devastated. Japan is devastated. They have dropped nuclear bombs on it. People don't have enough to eat. What they will buy? So option 2 out of the picture. So only person who's left is American consumer. Okay, so make them unhappy. Start ad saying, oh, my life is so unhappy. I should have a TV. I should have a radio. I should have a car. I should live in the suburb. Only then I will be good. So the American dream started, sold by the corporates. There was one very nice, I will try to share some videos. I just put it on YouTube. You will get the ads from the 1950s, the imagery they used. Middle class woman, 25-year-old, just started working. It was really fun how they have manipulated the whole public opinion. Okay, it is amazing. Yes, मतलब पैसा कमाने के लिए कुछ भी types. Hats off. How they have fully manipulated the propaganda. It is amazing. And if you don't have a TV, you'll be unhappy. And anyways, Russia will attack you. We just had a war. In 20 years, we'll have another war. Enjoy life. Maja di life. Daru piyo, ye wo. Chill, ekdam. So that is how the American consumer was driven. Now, unfortunately, the German consumer had no such luxuries. It was a war-torn, lost country trying to figure out what is the future. They always had the brains and the industrial capacity. They started rebuilding, obviously. And Marshall Plan was no favor to anyone. It was basically to generate demand for American corporates again. And most of the money went to American corporates. And the greed was lesser, by the way, compared to today. The numbers were much lower. They were in hundreds of millions of dollars, not like hundreds of billions and sometimes in trillions these days. So that is how the German economy started developing. But people had just seen a war. They had lost it. They had had 30 years, 20 years of nonsense. So people who were like 20 years in 1947, they could never forget that there was hyperinflation. So they never changed their habits. They were always earn 100, spend 30. Same with India, same with Japan, same with most of the other countries, China, all of us. So this became a trend. And then whatever becomes a trend, nobody usually changes it. And then some of the other European countries became too greedy, like Greeks and all, who anyways think that they can never compete with the Germans, right? So that is, there is a reason Germany could start 2 world wars, right? There is something about the German people and their culture and their way of thinking. So the Greeks and all partied on German money when Euro came. But Euro is basically a German thing. That if there was a Deutsche Mark today, it would be much stronger than the dollar, much stronger. So maybe one Deutsche Mark could be $4 or $5. The Swiss franc, for example, would be very strong currency. $1 would be 30, 40 JPY if the Japanese let it appreciate, maybe even 20. But to keep this mindset of export, we don't want our people to consume. We don't want to become consumer. We are producers. We make things and sell it to the Americans and make money from them. This mindset is not easy to change. And this is where all the problem is.
Interesting.
And that is why the rebalancing is not happening. So today we are in a very distorted global order, but now this corona, right? So nature will fix it. Human race has anyways never fixed anything because we are incapable of that. So nature will fix it. Now it is highly likely that corona will kill maybe 10, 20 crores, 200 million people. Probably, hopefully. So if corona kills that many, and then with all this trade pacts going out the door, everybody, the way I foresee it is, this is like the event of the Berlin Wall has fallen 30 years later. So falling of the Berlin Wall unleashed a trend of globalization, which is now ended. We could see the trends in the last 10 years or 12 years after 2008, anti-immigrant parties and all. I see them becoming much stronger over the next few years. A few big incidents will happen where somebody will be in an unfortunate place, wrong time types, which will kind of trigger it or make it worse. Like for example, if 8 lakh Indians have to come back from Kuwait, that in itself will generate a lot of noise and movement in India, that it is no more worth going out for a job, better find something else to do in India. And this will trigger a mass return of people to their home countries. especially first generation immigrants, and especially people who do not have citizenship of those countries which they have migrated to. And we are already seeing that. I know for sure in my circle, out of 10 people I know who were in France, 3-4 have come back, who were there for last 2-3 years, and the rest 2-3 want to come back. So you will see this mass return, and then trade will only be on need basis. So for example, India, we don't have crude oil. We still need it. We will import it, but only how much we need. We will also look at alternatives. So alternatives in India would be methanol, ethanol, bioethanol, sugar-based ethanol. We would probably import technology from Brazil for the flex fuel vehicles for the next 10-15 years. And then you move to hybrid vehicles and then BEV. In fact, Gadkari was trying to push 10 years, right? But the industry is not ready, so it may take 15. But if they don't listen to him, he will just invite others. So that is
Actually, a
how.
couple of very interesting points that you raised here, Nishant. So if you're not digressing too much, I can actually pull into another stem. But I remember Vaibhav wanted to present something else. So post that in the end, if you have time, I wanted to
Oh, did
understand.
he? I thought we were done with Titan. Sorry, I didn't realize it because I wanted to use the time and I just picked on this topic. Fine, Vaibhav, if you have something to present, go ahead. I didn't realize it. I thought you were done.
I'm not sure if it is Vaibhav or someone else. Someone had some numbers to discuss.
I have actually just went through the presentation and found some numbers. I don't know if we have already discussed about it, but still we can just give it a shot. We can see if they are interesting or not. I'll just share the screen.
Yeah. While you pull it up, Vaibhav, what I wanted to ask Nishant was, what you explained perfectly summarizes the consumerism in Europe at large, right? But if you take India, even India went through the cycles of license Raj in the early 60s, 70s. But then India was successfully able, we were successfully able to become a very consumer-driven economy, be it like you explained through the fall of Berlin Wall into socialism, the fantasy of socialism was coming to fade off. But nothing explains the high consumerism in India right now. The 62% that you showed.
It does, right? Very simply. We have never been a leader, right? For the last 1,000 years, we have been slaves and we have followed whoever has ruled us. So in this case, as I have said many times, after independence, 1947 to 19, we have had 3 phases in India. 1947 till the death of Nehru, it was non-aligned movement, where Mr. Nehru said, I neither want to be with USSR nor want to be USA. I am neither a socialist nor a capitalist. I will create my own movement called the non-aligned movement. That was more a political movement rather. And economically, he was very much left inclined. So we were actually following the Soviet model with the 5-year plans, etc. So socially left of center, economically left of center, socially definitely left of center, and politically non-aligned. So neither here nor there, somewhere in the air, right? We founded NAM basically, or we were one of the founding members. It was Mr. Nehru's idea that he wanted to be the next Churchill or Roosevelt or Stalin or Hitler or whatever. So that was the Nehru era of 20-25 years. Say 1967, I put an end to it, or 1970. Then comes the Indira era, where completely with the USSR for 20 years till the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then comes the capitalist era completely with the US. So in 1990, what did we do?
Nishant, sorry, but at this point during Indira era is where we had the license Raj happening around, right? So that's where even Indians experienced the dearth of hyperinflation and,
we never had hyperinflation. Where we did have hyperinflation, right? The economy was so tightly controlled. You never had hyperinflation, right? In Indira era, you just had a barter system. So instead of paying money for everything, you used to barter with the Eastern European nations. So there is a lot of literature available on that. Yesterday I was reading somewhere. There was never hyperinflation in India. Never ever.
My assumption or my understanding was that it is pseudo hyperinflation because having money did not mean anything back in the day, right? Because to be able to buy a car, you will still have to wait on line for probably 1 or 2 years.
Exactly right. So that was the complete
rate.
That was the complete opposite of consumerism, right? That is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. So you never had hyperinflation. In fact, you had very high cost of capital. All kinds of risk taking was discouraged, and you had a savings rate of 20%. So you were encouraged to save. So that was a different economic model altogether. So when that broke down, people realized that now they were free to buy whatever they wanted. So people like my mom, who were born in 1964, she was 26 when the Berlin Wall fell, or 25. Now they had always struggled to buy things, always. Even for 20 bucks to buy something, it was tough. So when they started getting an opportunity to buy, they started buying, and they created this generation. They brought children up like us, who were always taught that we couldn't live our dream, so you live your dream and buy everything you want. And there is a huge population like that. So that has kind of inculcated a habit that enjoy life, buy as much as you want. And then obviously, like I said, right, we surrendered complete control to American style capitalism. We allowed everything in the American way, and without the checks and balances of the Americans, actually. So we are in the Gilded Age. I have given so many links to that Gilded Age. Have you guys read about the Gilded Age?
No, I did not.
Has anyone read?
No.
Okay, it's on the Skype link. So that means people are not reading the Skype links. So go through the thing. It is the Gilded Age, is the period between 1890 to 1910 in the US, where two or three misters were there. Mr. Vanderbilt, who built the railroads, Mr. JP Morgan, who funded those railroads, and Mr. Andrew Carnegie. I don't know what he did. He was also in the steel, mostly steel and railroads. And these three people made crazy amounts of money. And Mr. Carnegie is better known as the founder of the Carnegie Mellon University today. But look how much he exploited labor during his time. He was one of the biggest exploiters of labor, Mr. Carnegie. And when he was
I mean,
dying, he said,
to add to whatever you're saying, Nishant, there's a very good documentary called "The Men Who Built America,"
Yeah.
which talks about the same. So I think the members could also have a look at that.
sure,
Yep.
share the link. I haven't looked at it. I will also look at it.
Sure.
So Mr. Carnegie, before he died, he suddenly realized that all his money was worth nothing, and then he built that university.
Yeah.
And basically the endowment is funded by him. So people know he's at a Carnegie Mellon University, but that is again a falsehood, right? Because it was not his money, it was the labor who built it, not him. So like people say, Shah Jahan built Taj Mahal as if it was his money. First of all, he didn't build it, the labor built it. The money came from the people, he taxed them. So what did he do? So yeah, that is what it is, and applies to everyone basically, not just Shah Jahan. It applies to Ashoka also. How can Ashoka be the great? He killed so many people. So how was he great? Just because he realized his sins after committing them. So you kill 10 million people and say, "Oh, sorry, I realized I made a mistake," and then I become Buddha. Well, that doesn't work, right? So yeah, and that is what it is. All kings were bad, and all empires are bad, but that is what it is. Human race moves on from one empire to the other without learning anything. Yeah, Vaibhav, go on. Sorry, I think again I hijacked your agenda.
Yeah, no worries. I think it was quite an interesting talk. Everyone probably enjoyed it. So I just pulled up some data. I mean, I had prepared another report as well. I'm sorry I could not present that, but I just thought that maybe it could interesting. I don't know if Ishwar or Kunal have talked about it, but if we see, this graph where we have the net sales as well as the profit before taxes for the jewelry particularly, then what we can observe here, one thing that I found interesting is that in this quarter they had like the jump from growth from minus 1.5 to 10%, and the same time the profit margin actually just increased by 2%. So the sales increased a lot but the profit did not, and this was something quite interesting. I don't know if
When you see the numbers, right? I can make it.
I can't hear you, Nishant.
Can't hear me? Okay, wait.
Just yeah. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, no. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask this 10% and all is quarter on quarter or year on year, but I got it. It's
Yeah,
year
this
on
is
year.
quarter on quarter. This was
No.
for the
No, this is year on year. So it is comparing third quarter of FY20 with third quarter of FY19. If you see, then only the number will tally. It is not comparing
Yeah.
third quarter of 20 with. So when you say quarter on quarter, right? So okay. So just to
Okay.
clarify for everyone, when you say quarter on quarter, it will be you are comparing the data of third quarter of financial year 20 with the second quarter of financial year 20. That will be quarter and quarter. Basically comparing April, May, June. So in this case, if it is third quarter, which means October, November, December 2019 to July, August, September 2019. That is what will be quarter on quarter. Whereas year on year will be you compare third quarter of FY20 with third quarter of FY19. That is called year on year comparison. Is this clear to everyone? Questions? Difference between
Okay.
QOQ. So when you see QOQ, it is quarter on quarter, which means third quarter versus second quarter. YOY means Q3 FY20 versus Q3 FY19. Clear to everyone? Questions?
But here it says 3Q financial year 20 to 4Q financial year 20, right? So it's annual. It's not quarter on quarter. It's year on year.
No. These are quarterly numbers. But if you see the number here is 5,409 crores, right? Now, if you go to that same 2019 number, it is 4,900. So basically in a year span, in the same quarter, they have grown from here to here, which is a 10% growth. So basically your denominator is, so the way they have derived this 10.6 is 5409. If somebody wants to put in an Excel, 5409 minus 4890 divided by 4890. That should give you 10.6%. Is this clear?
Okay. So it's 3Q19.
Yeah, makes sense now. Yeah, Nishan. Yeah. That's quite interesting.
So here, if you see for the 22nd quarter, so basically, if you see traditionally, you can see that the second quarter seems to be weak, or maybe something happened in this quarter. Okay, because there is absolutely no growth. In fact, there is a degrowth of minus 1.5. Go back.
Yeah, just I don't know. Laptop is.
And that's okay. So basically, that number is very, very interesting. That these are the things that we need to dig further into. What happened in this quarter? Why did this go minus? So basically, this is much
exactly.
before COVID and all, right? So what was happening? Was demonetization? Did the government change? What happened here? I don't remember. This is probably that ILFS quarter or something, where it was the impact of ILFS issue. And it will also be the marriage season. So usually marriage season in India is December, January timeframe. A lot of marriages happen in December. Okay. So this quarter is the marriage figures and all. So a lot of marriage shopping happens. And obviously, yeah, you have your Diwali, Durga Puja and all that. So Dhanteras and all that. So that is where you have this quarter will probably be the biggest one every time. So if you see historical trends also, third quarter should be the bigger one. So if you look at, I'm just looking at FY19. If you see third quarter is way bigger than the other quarters. If you look at 18 again, and second quarter is weak one because in India, this is the time of Sawan and Shraddh and all that. So in Shraddh, anyways, we consider it a very inauspicious month. So no shopping happens. And people in the south can talk more about the South Indian cycles.
But Nishan, there's another thing. See, for example, if you see for 17-18, the quarters, like initially they had great growth in these quarters, and then the growth it kept on falling.
No. So from where you are getting this? So 17, this 57, 18 is based on the 16 number, right? Where the 16 number is not here.
But even then.
Yeah, it is on a low base, right? See, look at the numbers are less. The lower the base, right? Maybe they had a very small market share. So maybe they were opening a new store every month or every 5 stores every month. Then they are there in all the big cities, right? So the market is already captured. Now they have to go to tier 2, tier 3 towns where people will not be so brand fascinated. They have all their relationship with their traditional jeweler. So they will just not suddenly shift to Titan. And if they are there in a small town where there are 5 jewelers already, who have 5,000 customers each, Titan will have to convince one of them to take a franchisee. But if that guy has to take Titan's franchisee, what will Titan offer him? If Titan offers him a lot, then the margins will go down. So they will not be able to maintain the margin. And if Titan opens a new store, will they make him a partner or will they try to pull his customers? If they make him a partner, why will he become partner with Titan? If he is not ready to become a partner with Titan, then how does Titan pull the business from him?
Actually, Vaibhav, what would have been interesting is a third row where they show the growth per quarter on quarter, right? So that would have given us because right now the growth that they're showing here is annualized, but the revenue is on quarter. So we cannot really correlate the quarterly growth versus the revenue growth.
Yeah. I mean, I just took this from the investors presentation, but I have this one as well. I think this is also quite interesting that they like the 5-year CAGR is 12.2%, and the income has actually increased over the 5 years. I mean, so this is, I don't know if someone else has discussed this, but this actually the trend looks positive here. And one more thing that I found interesting was that in FY19 the market capital, and 18 and 19 it really has increased a lot. So probably maybe they have issued new shares, or I don't know. Nishant, I mean, why would it increase?
What would increase?
The market capitalization.
The market capitalization would increase as a function of profit, right? And maybe the PE expanded, how I explained. Maybe people feel that the growth potential of Titan is higher, so they have given it a higher PE. And also what happens sometimes is these companies, once they cross a certain threshold in free float market capitalization, they become part of, and I kind of throw these numbers knowingly because I want people to ask what is free float, but nobody asked. So which means everybody knows. So when free float market capitalization of Titan crosses a certain amount, it gets included as part of Nifty. So when it gets included part of Nifty, a lot of funds start buying it because there are a lot of funds which only invest in Nifty stocks. So once you are part of Nifty, they will have to mandatorily invest in you. So that again gives us spurt in the stock price and all that. But yeah, we'll have to look at a lot more data before talking.
When you say Nifty, you mean Nifty 50, is it? Hello.
Yes, Siddharth, Nifty 50.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I just had these slides. So.
Yeah, I'm back. You guys can continue.
I have a question, Nishant. So it's interesting that you mentioned that once a company reaches a certain market cap, it becomes automatically part of Nifty 50. So basically, what?
Not automatically.
So
there is
there
is a process. We'll have to check on the SEBI website what they follow, but it's either weekly, monthly, or quarterly. Definitely not weekly. So every quarter it will be seen what is the top 50 companies by market capitalization, and say 5 companies are in the top 50, but they are not part of Nifty, and 5 companies are now not in top 50. So they were say 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. It can be anyone, but say for example they were 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, and now they are 61, 62, 63, 64, 65. So those will be removed from Nifty and the other 5 will be added. The ones that get removed from Nifty, it is a negative for them. And these are all easy ways to make money in the market actually. So if you just get this list, you know that those 5 will fall. So you can short it. And the other 5 which are getting added will go up at least by 3-4%. So you buy it and sell it within a week or so.
I think, Nishant, there's something also called Nifty Next 50 or something like that, right?
Yeah. So there are many, but I'm just speaking about the Sensex and the Nifty here. Nifty follows free float. Sensex, I thought, followed full market capitalization, but that is not correct. I think both are free float. But we can double check. But Nifty is definitely free float. Now, does everyone understand free float market capitalization? And I'm going to ask some people to explain. So then why that question was not asked?
Yeah, so basically free float in
Wait.
free float
Vaibhav,
market
Vaibhav.
capitalization.
Wait.
Yes.
Wait.
Sure.
Yeah, so who all doesn't know? So Ashrar doesn't know. Who else? Everybody else other than Ashrar knows, huh? Fine. So I will pick somebody to explain.
No, even I don't know. Nishant, even I don't know.
So why the question was not asked, Shreya? Okay, fine.
Sorry.
Who else
I'm noting
know?
it down. I have a lot of questions, but in the end, I guess we will discuss some of them, like you said yesterday, some of these terms.
Sure. So 2 of you don't know. Everybody else knows, huh?
You can also count me, Nishanti, somewhere.
You know or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, so 3. Rest people know, huh? Okay. Sushma, can you explain? What is free float market cap?
Hey, yeah, I actually, while you guys were discussing, I was looking it up. So basically, I had heard about it, I had not remembered it. So basically, free float is the total value of all the share that's in the with the shareholders minus the promoters. I think that's what I understood.
Correct. Is it clear to everyone?
It is minus the promoters' holding of the company.
Correct. So is it clear for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. People who have been in the course for long, you remember which example I gave when I explained this?
I'm thinking about Bajaj Finance.
No.
I think RIL, Reliance, we were discussing.
No. Because this is the example I give a lot. Because this is how I learned actually. When somebody taught me free float, they taught me with this example.
Was it Apple or Amazon?
No, it's 2 Indian IT service companies.
Okay, Infosys then.
That is one. The second one?
TCS.
No.
Wipro.
Correct. So which one had higher free float market capitalization out of TCS and Infi?
I think Infosys.
And why is that?
Because promoter holding is not much in Infi, whereas in Wipro, I think 75% is held by Azim. Yeah.
Correct. But you guys then don't go back and watch videos and you remember what is taught, forget what is taught. Huh? So now everybody remembered. Correct. So basically the example I gave is because I learned it in 2004. So there was this MBA guy from TAPME who taught me this. So Wipro at that time, Azim Premji had 86% market share. 86% of Wipro was owned by Mr. Premji alone. Only 14% was free float. So if the total market cap was Wipro on that day was 1,000 crores, free float was only 140 crores. Is this clear to everyone? Whereas in Infi, the 4 people who count themselves as promoter or 5 people held only 20%. So if the total market cap was Infi was 1,000 crores, 800 crore was free float. So 6 times more than Wipro. So that is why Wipro was always undervalued as a company at that time, because Infosys was part of Nifty, so it had a larger shareholder base and it had a higher P, price to earnings multiple. Is this clear to everyone now? Okay, I think we are done with the session. Vaibhav, you had more to add, or we can do with the Q&A?
Nishan, small question here. Nishant, I think free fall. I think Wipro would be, if any changes happen, any event happens, I think in change will be very fast in Wipro, right? Because of free float is very less, and the demand will be increased. The market will react very quickly.
Yeah, the share price of Wipro will be more volatile, if that is your question. Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, if you have to put a graph, lower the free float, the higher the share price volatility.
Mm-hmm.
Because available supply of shares in the market is less. Guys, Whoever is not speaking, please go on mute.
Does people prefer Wipro or Infi? Well, just a small question. I think I would
In that time it was always Infi. Today the game has changed, but yeah, at that time it was always Infi. Infi was always the market stock market darling because of their good corporate governance policies. They were the first one to give ESOPs. A lot of Infi employees became really rich and all that.
And
Infi had a different feel to it.
And that's the reason I observed SBI, L&T, and also ITC. They have, I think, 90% are publicly traded. So those stocks doesn't change like 10% or 5% in a single day. Those stocks will move like a elephant move, just small move, 3%, 2%, 1% on the daily chart. Because the availability of the shares are more in ITC, L&T.
Yeah, but SBI is not 90% free float. From where you got that? SBI is owned by Government of India, so 50% plus is Government of India share.
Okay. I thought I saw somewhere. Let me check.
Go ahead, questions.
So you said share volatility. That means the share prices go up and down very quickly, or what does that mean?
Yes, exactly. And it's good for traders like me. The more volatile a stock, the more fun it is to make money. Either go up or down. It should not. See, traders make money if the price goes up or down. Don't worry which side. Whichever side it goes will make money. It should not stay constant.
But this is like day-to-day trading, right? I mean,
day-to-day or even short term. You buy on Monday, sell on Friday. But yeah, it can be day also. So a lot of times I do it. I buy at 100. If I get 102 during the day, I sell. If I don't get, I hold. I sell after 3 days. But I sell at 102. As Warren Buffett says, never sell at a loss. It takes 3 days or 3 months, you hold. And never forget rule number 1.
I had some basic questions like what is, I mean, AWACS and Nifty. I mean, I hear this a lot in channels, but I can't really find the definitions properly.
So statistically, what they do is they create an index. So as I said, free float market capitalization. So say the company's market cap, you understand?
You mean market capitalization or market cap? No.
Yeah, market capitalization is the same. Short is market cap.
I guess the money involved in the market selling, I guess. I don't know. From
No.
Definition.
Okay, so now it is a good time to test others. Okay, so I'll let someone explain. Who's Pranali, can you explain market cap to Ashrar in very simple terms? Take a very simple example.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, so basically market cap or market capitalization means your total value of the company. So for example, let's take Titan. What price it was trading. So for example, say 900. And they have total number of shares, say 1 lakh. So the market cap would be 1 lakh into 900. So that would be my total market capitalization of Titan, that only company. Have you understood?
That is correct, Pranali. Is this clear, Ashrar?
I got it. And the free float market is that minus the shares from the promoter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So say out of 1,50,000 is promoter holding. So the rest 50,000 into 900. So 4.5 crore will be
the market cap.
No, the market cap is 9 crore. Free float market cap is 4.5 crore.
Okay.
Now, based on the free float market cap, the Nifty index is generated. So each company will be ranked on the market cap. So say the top company in India with free float market cap has 100 crores as market cap. The next one has 90 crores. The third one has 80 crores. So they will add up all the 50 and then assign weights. So it's a weighted average calculation. So say total comes to 2000 crores. The company which has 100 crore of free float market cap, 100 divided by 2000. So 5% of Nifty is that company. That will be the top one in the Nifty. Then second rank, third rank, so on and so forth. And 50 companies make Nifty. So with these 50 companies, they have constructed an index. It is just a
collection of these companies.
Exactly. So most of the indices in the world are free float. Now S&P 500 is a more interesting one because it has 500 companies, which is much more representative of the economy. Whereas in India, it is only 50. So 50 companies, and Sensex is only 30, whereas there are 4,000 companies on BSE. So basically your Sensex could be moving up or down. Sensex could be down 3%, but there could be some company which has gone up 10%. And that is the fun, that out of the 3,000, you should know which will go up 10% next day. And people who have that kind of information become millionaires. And there are people who have that kind of information, at least not sure about 10%, but they know that that company will move. Okay. Questions?
So you said they have the information that those companies will move or down. Is it something related to insiders information, or how do they know about this?
Ranjit, stop the recording.